And good afternoon and welcome to Jmore's JBiz Meetup, part of Jmore's event series. My name is Gary Stein, and I'll be your host today on a very important topic, and thank you for joining us. It's a conversation about the fragile state of our American democracy. We have muted everyone's microphone so that we can all listen and enjoy today's program. I'd like to thank our sponsors first, the law practice of Nemphos Brow. Nemphos Brow offers big firm expertise and boutique service with lawyers experienced in all aspects of business and corporate law. Nemphos Brow focuses on building true strategic partnerships with their clients and strongly supports entrepreneurs and emerging businesses. Their subsidiary, Old Line Government Affairs, provides government relations, procurement, and state lobbying services, as well as strong Maryland relationships and bipartisan access. Our media partner this afternoon is WYPR, that's 88.1, your NPR news station. And thank you to both of them. Our moderator today is Dr. Scott Rifkin. Scott is an internal medicine doctor. He studied at the George Washington University Medical School and at UMBC. Scott is an unrepentant liberal and believer in basic human rights. He's a Baltimore Magazine top doc. He started, grown, and raised private equity for multiple startups and sold several companies valued at over $600 million. Scott now runs a healthcare data mining company and a Medicare managed care company. Scott is the proud publisher and owner of Jmore. Jmore is a multi-platform content provider distributing magazines throughout the Baltimore metro area and Howard County, and publishing fresh stories and interviews daily on jmoreliving.com to the secular Jewish community. Our esteemed guest this afternoon is U.S. Congressman Jamie Raskin. Representative Raskin is the U.S. representative for Maryland's 8th Congressional District. He recently served as the lead House manager during the second U.S. Senate impeachment trial of former President Donald Trump. Representative Raskin is currently serving his third term on the Judiciary, House Oversight, and House Administration Committees, and is serving his second term on the Rules Committee and the Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis. Prior to his time in Congress, Raskin was a 3-term state senator in Maryland, where he served as the Senate Majority Whip. He earned a reputation for building coalitions in Annapolis to deliver a series of landmark legislative accomplishments, including marriage equality, abolition of the death penalty, a ban on the sale of military-style assault weapons, and a hike in the minimum wage. A professor of constitutional law for more than a quarter century at the American University Washington College of Law, Representative Raskin has written several books, including the Washington Post bestseller, Overruling Democracy, the Supreme Court versus the American People, and We the Students, Supreme Court cases for and about America's students. He and a collaborator recently wrote a new proposed Maryland state song to replace the existing one, which has been criticized for its racist and pro-Confederate lyrics. Representative Raskin is a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School, where he served as an editor of the Harvard Law Review. And without further ado, I pass the baton to Scott Rifkin. Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for taking the time today. Truly appreciate it. I know we've only got about 25 minutes on your schedule, so I want to jump right into things. I will tell you, although we have a nice little audience this morning, we generally have several thousand people who view these programs both on YouTube and Facebook and the other places we distribute them. So thank you for taking the time. We recently watched you deal with the unimaginable and then try to sort out the unforgivable. You lost your son, Tommy, a Harvard Law School student, to depression. That's an unimaginable horror for any parent to lose a child. The day after your son's funeral, the unforgivable attack on democracy occurred at the Capitol. You were there with your daughter. 6 days later, you were chosen to lead the impeachment effort. You were brilliant. I enjoyed watching the brilliance of what you did on that stage, in that venue. Where do you get the strength and focus to deal with all of that? It's an incredible juxtaposition of events in your life.
Scott, thank you for the question. Thank you for having me and your kind words. Gary, thank you as well. I'm delighted to be with everybody there, and I see one of my former colleagues in the house. I'm not sure, maybe he disappeared. I'll find him when he comes back. It's Dan Moorheim. And hello to you, Dan. It's great to be with you as well. Look, people ask me that. I wish I had a good answer. I mean, we had a remarkable team of impeachment managers, and there was a lot of passion in our presentation. And I told my team not to conceal the passion. I mean, we were governed by our understanding of the law, of what incitement to violent insurrection means, and all of the law regarding high crimes and misdemeanors and the constitutional architecture undergirding impeachment. But having said that, everybody there was a victim of that crime. Everybody there was in the room when they laid siege to the Capitol of the United States. Any of us could have been killed, as Lindsey Graham said, right when it was over, because they could have had a bomb. You had 800 people enter the Capitol building without going through a metal detector or receiving any other kind of security screening. So all of us could have died. So there was a lot of passion coming still right out of that. Underneath that passion was anger about what had been done to us. But underneath that anger, I would say, Scott, was a lot of love for America, for our Constitution, for what this country has done for so many generations and waves of immigrants and for all of our families. And we were just not going to let a bunch of violent insurrectionists and secessionists waving Confederate battle flags destroy everything that our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents and so on have fought for all the way back through World War II, when our grandparents saw fascists marching in Europe, and they didn't see very fine people on both sides. They understood what a threat to democracy looks like. And our parents who fought in the civil rights movement and the women's movement and all of the civilizing movements of our day. So this is a precious legacy we have, and I simply was not going to stand by and let it all be squandered and destroyed by people wearing T-shirts saying Camp Auschwitz and finish the job and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that you were able to pull it together the way you did, and it's very admirable. And thank you for doing that. Democracy is fragile. History teaches us that. The video of the lunatic right-wing terrorists marching through the Capitol is etched in our minds. Did the American democracy suffer permanent damage that day? What do you think?
Well, that's up to us. This is a living history and it's not over. The vote in the Senate was 57-43. This was the most bipartisan vote to convict a president in the history of the United States. There have been 4 impeachment trials: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Trump 1, and Trump 2. And this was by far the most bipartisan in nature, because oftentimes the parties just split. But here we had 10 representatives join us in the House, including the chair of the House Republican Conference, Liz Cheney. And on the Senate side, 7 Republicans joined us of the 50, and they were from the Northeast, New England, Mid-Atlantic, the South, the Midwest, and the West, Alaska. So we had senators from, all over the country joining us. It's true that Donald Trump beat the constitutional spread, you might say, which is a 2/3 requirement to convict. But we believe, and every day I believe more strongly, that we convicted him in the court of public opinion, and we convicted him in the eyes of history. But having said that, we end up in an ambiguous place, because I think he has become a pariah in national political culture. But on the other hand, he has consolidated his power and his hold over the GOP. He's really now the principal dispenser of money, endorsements, political office, and influence in the Republican Party. which is now behaving much less like a modern political party and much more like an authoritarian religious cult with a cult of personality around the leader. That's a pretty scary degeneration of one of our great political parties. 2020 was a remarkable year for a lot of reasons, but one of them was that it was the first time in the history of the Democratic and Republican parties that one of the parties, the GOP, didn't have a platform at their convention. They went and they decided not to adopt a platform. And what that meant was that the platform for the Republican Party is whatever Donald Trump said it was. And that's only gotten worse since then. So when you say whether this inflicted permanent damage, it certainly inflicted provisional damage that is very serious in terms of further polarizing and dividing the country into a camp of reality and fact-based politics versus one that is connected to QAnon and conspiracy theory and escalating derangement. Is that permanent? That's really up to us.
Okay, so the president continues to lie, and you mentioned this, to his followers. There's a fealty test of the big lie by major politicians in Washington about the election. The thought that Donald Trump won the election is ridiculous. And the leadership in the Republican Party understands that. They're not stupid. How does the left and the center respond to that? What do we do to bring that reality to the folks that still follow those laws?
I mean, that is a great question. I wish I had an answer to it. There is an article in the Washington Post, I can't remember if it was today or yesterday, about how embrace of the big lie is now the precondition for success in the Republican Party. If you want to get money, if you want to get endorsements, if you want to, accede to public office, you've got to accept that Donald Trump won the election and Joe Biden lost the election. And then all of the subsidiary lies that cascade out of that, like the lie Donald Trump is telling now about his followers coming into the Capitol, hugging and kissing the Capitol officers. I guess he's not referring to the 145 of them who were wounded and hospitalized as people beat them over the head with hockey sticks and Confederate battle flags and Trump flags and so on. He's certainly not referring to Officer Sicknick, who died the next day after undergoing a chemical attack. But that, we're hearing more and more of that, a complete whitewash of what had happened. And again, that makes me feel even more vindicated that we went ahead with the impeachment and conviction, despite all of the people who are saying, well, let's let bygones be bygones and let's heal the country by papering over what had happened. I mean, we needed to create that historical record, and that historical record exists incontrovertibly, despite what Donald Trump tries to brainwash people with. But when you ask the question, how are we going to get out of this? I mean, I had my staff order me every book we can find about religious cults and how people get deprogrammed. And, it's funny, when you read these books, what I conclude from it is there are basically two things that they do with people in that situation. One, they try to get them out of it so they're not being completely bombarded with the same messages. Then two, when they're out of it, they try to envelop them with a sense of affection and connection and get them to remember what life was like before they started essentially, ingesting propaganda for their daily bread. And then while you show them affection and tenderness, you've got to be absolutely emphatic about what is fact and what is real and what is make-believe and what is nonsense. And what's so scary about the moment that we're in is that you just have tens of millions of people who are willing to adopt totally irrational and unscientific beliefs about everything from what happened on January 6th to who won the election to whether or not it makes sense to get a vaccination for COVID-19, or whether, George Soros is trying to plant some kind of chip in your body to follow you around. I mean, there's just crazed magical thinking that has been unleashed in the land, and we have to reckon with what the role that social media has played in our current environment.
So will there be, Congressman, a commission at the level of Congress to look at the insurrection?
Well, I hope so. I mean, we've been trying to get that done. The problem is that the GOP, which originally was going to go along with it, I think again got pulled under with that Donald Trump undertow, and now they're saying they don't want any commission that will look at the violent insurrection on January 6th and its causes that doesn't also look at Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So it's just a game of propaganda and building smoke screens instead of looking at what actually happened.
So let's change the subject just a little bit, just a little to the edge. We all believe in free speech, but it seems that the Australian that leads the Fox News empire seems determined to undermine U.S. democracy. You're a constitutional scholar. Is there a solution to the dishonesty of the right-wing press, or has the advance in technology led to such a separation of audiences that there's no way to create a generally accepted body of knowledge and facts to run this country with? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the Jeffersonian plan was public education, that you train people in the skills of critical thinking, and you give people real knowledge and real information. And obviously that's centuries away from the existence of the internet and so on. But our public education system has weakened to the point, and our civics education and our constitutional literacy training have weakened to the point where people are basically disarmed. They don't have the means of intellectual self-defense against propaganda and conspiracy theory that goes online. And of course, what follows quickly in the wake of that is racism and anti-Semitism. And I mean, some of the oldest anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, are back, but with a much broader audience than ever before in human history because of the internet. And I confronted Mark Zuckerberg about this when he came before the Judiciary Committee. And, I said, are you the government? Like, do you think that you're in charge such that the First Amendment binds you? No, he said, we're a speaker. And I said, well, if you're a speaker, why don't you make the decision to take Nazi and racist filth off of your channel? You don't have a responsibility to put that out there. You're not like a public park that's got to issue a permit to all comers, I mean, I don't want Nazi filth on my website. Why do you want it on yours? I know yours is bigger, but I mean, is it just for the purposes of making more money? I mean, that's not a very responsible way of thinking about it. So I think that we're in a process of kind of trying to educate the big social media tech giants about this. But if they show some social responsibility, as Twitter did with Donald Trump, just saying, we're not going to accept lies about the election. Joe Biden won by more than 7 million votes. He got 306 electoral college votes to 232 electors for Trump, a margin that Trump declared a landslide when he won by the exact same numbers in 2016. Then he just turns around and without any evidence at all, with 62 federal and state courts rejecting every claim that they had of fraud or corruption, he just says, I won the election. And Twitter just said, you know what, we're not going to put that out there anymore. And they put their foot down and they said, fine, you go exercise your free speech rights somewhere else. This is my channel. And what do you know? Trump, he skulked off. He started, whining and complaining about it, but he doesn't have anywhere else to go. Go build your own channel. If you want to set up the liar social media, you set up the liar social media, and then we have to figure out how to deal with that. But at the very least, the ones that want to maintain some kind of mainstream acceptance cannot tolerate that kind of lying. And also that sort of racism and anti-Semitism, which are the gateway to destruction of liberal democracy.
Does Congress have a role?
I think Congress does have a role. We've helped the internet grow with, this provision, which has given them immunity from suit for different kinds of injuries, because they are basically acting like a platform for others. Fine, but we don't have to extend a platform or we don't have to impose as a condition of the platform that they are equally open between truth and lies, or civil discourse and uncivil discourse.
Let's talk a little bit about the pandemic for a moment. Thank you for that answer. Talk about the pandemic. I'm in healthcare. I've been in and out of hospitals and nursing homes and every other healthcare setting you can imagine I've been involved with. And amazingly, even in a healthcare setting, many healthcare workers are refusing to take the vaccine. Whether it's misinformation from the right-wing press, whether it's rumors in various communities, what's the role of government to try to get folks to take their vaccine and be part of the public solution to this problem?
Well, that is the role of government. That is the role of leadership. I mean, it's not to lie. I mean, it's to explain that there are some risks, but the risks are tiny compared to the risks of contracting COVID-19. And the vast majority of health workers, please correct me, Dr. Rifkin, if I'm wrong, but the vast majority of health workers, despite some vaccine hesitancy in some quarters, have gone ahead and taken it. And people need to understand that. I think that's one thing that's been convincing to people, that their doctors and their nurses have taken it. The government can show leadership here. I mean, we're in a very different situation today in the Biden-Harris administration, where it's not, quack medical cures about, people injecting themselves with bleach and, everything's going to disappear magically by Easter and all of this stuff. So I think, people are grown-ups, and I think that if the government is not run by people who just make things up, people will listen to the government. And I think we are in the process of restoring people's faith and confidence in government. And we're in the process of showing people the government can be an instrument of the public interest in the common good, not the private self-enrichment of the president and his cronies.
In the nursing home setting, which I'm very familiar with, unfortunately, greater than 50% of workers, most of the patients have been vaccinated, but more than 50% of the workers have refused the vaccine. Does government have a role in creating actual incentives?
Well, yeah, that's astounding to me. Thank you for telling me that. I would love to hear your analysis of why, why that's happening. You would think they'd be the first people in line to get the shot. So I don't know why that's happening. But yeah, I mean, that is the role of government. Government, Brandeis said, government is the great educator, is the omnipresent educator. And it's not government as coercion, but it's government as a teacher, because government has a great access to the information that we need. So I wasn't aware of that. I don't know how you explain that, Scott.
Yeah, I'll send you notes separately on that and the analysis. I'm happy to do that. But is there a role for actual incentives? Does the government?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, put it this way. If somebody was telling me, you could spend $100 million doing TV ads and social media ads telling people, get the shots, get the shot. Or you might say, you get the shot and you get $100 gift certificate to, whatever it might be. Well, why not? But I mean, what's so ironic is that when we were back in the last administration and we were fighting for a real plan, all we heard from my colleagues across the aisle was, well, we're just going to wait for herd immunity. Herd immunity is going to solve it. Well, now we're at a point where we actually can get to herd immunity because of the vaccine, but there's still so much disinformation out there that we can't get to herd immunity. They're preventing us from getting there. So we've got to figure out how to, just get into those final audiences of the vaccine hesitant and convince them to do it. I mean, we don't want to see a resurgence and a flare-up of this.
I completely agree. Let's talk about voting rights for a minute. All over the country, voting rights are being chipped away at. Is HR 1 going to be law? Is there a chance?
But HR 1, well, you know, it is passed the House of Representatives. There's great stuff in it, including universal automatic voter registration. So we're not constantly fighting these tactics of voter suppression and purging people from the polls. There's it abolishes gerrymandering by imposing mandatory, independent, nonpartisan, no politicians involved redistricting commissions in every state in the union, and on and on. But you know, Tocqueville said in Democracy in America that democracy is either always shrinking and shriveling away, or it's expanding and it's growing. And so one party has put in 350 different bills to eliminate weekend voting, to eliminate early voting, to, you know, make you go get a notary public sign your request for an absentee ballot. To in Georgia, they've just got one where it's a year in jail if you pass a bottle of water to somebody waiting in line to go vote. Okay, that's one party's vision. And then the other party, we're saying, let's get into the 21st century and guarantee everybody's right to vote. So this is the struggle that we're in. It's back to your original question. You know, are we going to have strong democracy or not? Are we going to have like a hollowed out autocratic form of government, which is just used for money making by the people who get on the inside of it?
So what do you think? Can it get through the Senate? Can the bill pass?
So yeah, so we passed it in the House. Unfortunately, I think that the Republicans are all gathering around voter suppression as their real platform, and it will take us getting rid of the filibuster to pass it. And I do think that this is the right occasion to do it. I mean, there are a lot of different bills that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It might be HR 8, you know, gun violence, a universal background check on violent criminals, being able to purchase firearms, or it might be the infrastructure bill. But I think it should be the foundational bill of every citizen's right to vote, to participate in the democracy.
I have two more questions for you. I know you're on short time, and if you've got
I'm being paged, so yeah, I'll go fast.
Okay, immigration. Our population growth is incredibly low. The right wing attacks immigrants and the concept of immigration. Your grandparents and mine came from Russia. We have similar last names. Who knows? Okay. But where are we going with immigration? My middle son is a young lawyer who handles asylum cases for poor clients. What do I tell him about the direction of this country immigration?
Well, I mean, one of the positive signs that we've got going is that we know that in Washington, that the Republicans in Washington want to polarize everything. So they don't want us to get to yes on immigration. But when you actually go out to the country on any of these issues, including voting rights, including gun violence, including immigration, you find a lot more bipartisan consensus. Most people don't hate immigrants. Most people remember that America was created, like Tom Paine said, as an asylum for humanity. Not an insane asylum, mind you, but an asylum for humanity, okay? And people understand what America has meant to our families. And so, there's some hard issues in there, and we have to bite the bullet on a bunch of those issues. But I think that we can get there. But if you notice what Joe Biden is doing, he's going out to the country, the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents out in America, not to Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy. Those people want to fight. They don't want anything to happen. They want to, their program is what it was with Barack Obama. We're going to stop you from getting anything done that you wanted to get done. In other words, we want your administration to fail so much for political reasons. We're willing to see failure for America. to me, that's fundamentally unpatriotic way of looking at it. I consider myself a partisan Democrat in the sense that I'm going to go campaign like hell for my party. But once the election's over and we're in, we've got to remember what the word party means. It comes from the French word parti. It means a part of the whole. Our party is just part of the whole. Once we're in, we got to be working for all of America, everybody together. And we know how to do it. This is how we do constituent work. You call my office in Rockville, you need help on Social Security, Medicare, PPP, VA loan. We don't ask what your party is. We just ask if you live in my district, and then we go to work for you. So let's not play dumb. We know what it means to be nonpartisan.
Last question. I know you've got a limit. The Black Lives Matter movement, aided by modern technology of video exposure of incidents, has gained the moral high ground. Seems like a true moment of opportunity. How does the Congress help?
Well, we passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which has got great stuff in there. It's mandating dashboard cameras and it's mandating body cams for the cops. Those have made all the difference in the world, actually getting this stuff on video so people can see what actually is happening. We were getting rid of some of the corrupt judge-made doctrines like qualified immunity, a nationwide database of cops that have been disciplined so somebody's not fired in New Jersey, and then they resurface in Houston, Texas. And so there's great stuff in there that can be done. We can make really sensible, practical progress on this. Now, some of it, I don't mean to overstate how easy it is, because there are police forces in the country, New York City is one of them, where you get real cultures of hostility to people's rights that can't be. A cop, like a congressman or a city council person, is a servant of the people. In a democracy, the people govern. And those of us who aspire and attain to public office, I don't care how high it is, to be president of the United States, you are nothing but the servant of the people.
Congressman, you are refreshing. You're brilliant. We thank you so tremendously for being here today. We know we've hit your time limit. You've been kind enough to go 5 minutes over, and your staff asked us to not go over, so I apologize. Right. But thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. And Gary, I'm going to turn it back over.
Thank you very much.
Those words, Scott and Representative Raskin. Thank you so much. A big thank you also to our sponsors today, Nemphos Brow and WYPR. And Representative Raskin, if I may, before you go, I'll just offer you a prayer, a Jewish prayer. May the omnipresent comfort you among the rest of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Congressman.